Keanu Reeves stood calmly by his red Ferrari at a dusty California gas station, his quiet demeanor a stark contrast to the Hollywood glamour he's known for. Nearby, two rough bikers eyed Sandra Bullock with predatory smirks, their menace practically dripping from their leather jackets. But what happened next would turn a simple pit stop into a heart-pounding showdown and leave an unexpected twist no one saw coming. Before we dive into the full story, drop a comment letting us know where you're watching from. If you love gripping tales like this, don't forget to subscribe, because tomorrow we've got another incredible story waiting for you. The California sun dipped low on the horizon, painting the sky in fiery hues of orange and gold as Keanu Reeves guided his sleek red Ferrari down the Pacific Coast Highway. Beside him sat Sandra Bullock, her dark hair catching the fading light, a relaxed smile tugging at her lips. The two Hollywood icons were en route to a high-profile charity auction in Los Angeles, an event set to raise funds for aspiring actors and filmmakers, a cause close to their hearts. The hum of the engine filled the air, a steady rhythm beneath their easy conversation, the kind only old friends could share. "You know," Sandra said, glancing at Keanu with a playful glint in her eye, "this feels a little like old times. Me, you, and a fast ride." Keanu smirked, keeping his gaze on the winding road ahead. "Yeah, except this time there's no bomb on board. And I'm the one behind the wheel. Progress, right?" Sandra laughed, leaning back in her seat. "Progress? I'll believe it when I see you handle a curve without me holding my breath. I still remember you fumbling that bus in Speed." Keanu shot her a mock-offended look. "Fumbling? I saved the day, thank you very much. You were just too busy yelling at me to notice." Their banter flowed effortlessly, a nod to the chemistry that had made them legends on screen decades ago. For a moment, the world outside melted away. No paparazzi, no flashing cameras, just the open road and the promise of a quiet evening ahead. The Ferrari sliced through the coastal breeze, its glossy frame reflecting the last rays of daylight, a symbol of freedom amid their chaotic lives. But that peace shattered when a sharp beep cut through their laughter. Keanu's eyes flicked to the dashboard where a blinking light warned of a nearly empty fuel tank. He tapped the panel lightly as if willing it to change its mind, then sighed. "Well, that's inconvenient." Sandra followed his gaze and chuckled. "Don't tell me you forgot to gas up before we left." "What's next, Keanu? Stranded on the highway?" He shook his head, a faint grin lingering. "Not a chance. Look ahead. There's a station." Sure enough, a weathered gas stop loomed into view, its flickering neon sign a lonely beacon against the twilight. Little did they know that stop would mark the end of their calm drive and the beginning of something far more intense. The Ferrari's engine purred to a stop as Keanu Reeves eased it into the dusty lot of the gas station, a relic of a place that looked like it hadn't seen a fresh coat of paint since the 80s. The neon sign overhead flickered feebly, its buzzing letters spelling out fuel and food in a half-hearted glow that barely cut through the encroaching dusk. The air carried a faint tang of gasoline and stale coffee, mingling with the salty breeze off the nearby coast. The station was a lonely outpost, its cracked pavement and faded stripes giving it an abandoned feel. Only a handful of souls occupied the scene. A bored clerk slouched behind the counter inside, his eyes glued to a flickering TV, and two rough-looking bikers lounging near a pair of beat-up motorcycles parked under a sagging awning. Their leather jackets gleamed dully in the low light, patched with insignia that hinted at a life lived hard and fast. Keanu swung open the driver's door and stepped out, stretching his legs as he surveyed the area. Something about the stillness gnawed at him, a quiet that felt too heavy, too watchful. He shook it off and popped the fuel cap, reaching for the pump with practiced ease. Sandra, meanwhile, slipped off her sunglasses and pushed her door open. "Since we're here, I'm grabbing a water," she said, tossing him a quick smile before heading toward the convenience store. Her footsteps crunched faintly on the gravel as she crossed the lot, her figure framed briefly by the station's grimy glass door before it swung shut behind her. As the pump clicked to life, Keanu's gaze drifted toward the bikers. They hadn't moved, but their eyes had, tracking Sandra's every step with a glint that set his jaw tightening. One was a hulking figure, his thick arms crossed over a barrel chest, a tangle of beard spilling down his front. The other was leaner, wiry, with a crooked grin that flashed a glint of gold in his teeth. Their stares lingered too long, too sharp, and Keanu's instincts prickled. He kept his posture casual, one hand steady on the pump, but his attention sharpened. The soft hum of fuel flowing into the tank was the only sound breaking the silence, until a low whistle from the bigger biker sliced through it, aimed straight at Sandra. Keanu's head tilted slightly. Trouble, he thought, was already stirring. Inside the dimly lit convenience store, Sandra Bullock moved toward the cooler at the back, her steps light but purposeful. The air was stale, thick with the scent of old linoleum and cheap air freshener, and a scratchy country tune crackled faintly from a radio behind the counter. She barely noticed the two bikers outside until the bigger one, Big Beard with his hulking frame and a raggedy mass of facial hair, let out another sharp whistle as she passed the glass door. His sound cut through the quiet like a blade, followed by a low chuckle from his leaner companion Goldtooth, whose crooked grin flashed that telltale glint of metal. "Well, damn," Big Beard drawled, loud enough for his voice to carry inside. "Ain't that a sight? Hollywood royalty gracing us peasants." Goldtooth snickered, leaning forward on his bike. "Bet she's too good to say hi to the likes of us." Sandra paused, her hand hovering over a bottle of water in the cooler. She was used to attention. Years in the spotlight had taught her how to brush it off, but something in their tone prickled her skin. She glanced at the clerk, a scrawny kid with a backward cap, but he was too engrossed in his muted baseball game to care. Outside, Keanu Reeves stood by the Ferrari, the gas pump still humming in his grip. Through the smudged glass window, he caught the shift in the biker's posture, the way Big Beard straightened up, his meaty hands flexing, and how Goldtooth's eyes narrowed like a predator sizing up prey. Their words floated across the lot, crude and taunting, and Keanu's fingers tightened slightly around the nozzle. He didn't move yet, though. Years of navigating chaos, on screen and off, had honed his patience, his ability to read a room before acting. Sandra pulled the water bottle free and turned toward the counter, keeping her expression neutral. But the bikers weren't done. Big Beard took a step closer to the store, his boots scuffing the pavement. "Hey, sweetheart," he called, voice dripping with mock charm. "Why don't you come chat with some real folks?" Goldtooth laughed again, a harsh, grating sound. Keanu's eyes flicked to Sandra's silhouette inside, then back to the men. The situation was souring fast, a spark waiting for a match. Still, he held his ground, watching, waiting, because, sometimes, the first move wasn't the best one. The metallic bell above the convenience store door jangled as Big Beard and Goldtooth pushed their way inside, their heavy boots thudding against the worn linoleum. The air shifted instantly, the lazy hum of the radio drowned out by the weight of their presence. Sandra Bullock stood near the counter, water bottle in hand, ready to pay and leave, but the bikers had other plans. Big Beard lumbered over to the counter and leaned against it, his massive frame blocking her path to the clerk. His beard twitched as he grinned, a greasy, toothy smirk that didn't reach his cold eyes. "Where are you rushing off to, princess?" he said, his voice a low growl laced with mockery. Goldtooth slunk closer, his wiry frame coiled with menace, and before Sandra could step back, he reached out and clamped a bony hand around her wrist. "Hey now," Goldtooth rasped, his gold-capped tooth glinting under the fluorescent lights. "No need to run off so quick, we're just getting friendly." His grip wasn't tight enough to bruise, not yet, but it was firm, a silent threat pulsing through his fingers. Sandra froze for a split second, her pulse kicking up, but she didn't flinch. She'd faced worse than a couple of loudmouths in her time. Keeping her voice steady, she met his gaze and said, "Let go of me, now." Her tone was calm, clipped, the kind of command that usually worked in crowded rooms. But Goldtooth just chuckled, a dry grating sound, and tightened his hold instead. "Oh, I like that fire," he said, leaning in close enough that she could smell the stale beer on his breath. "Bet you're a real spitfire when you're mad." Big Beard straightened up, cracking his knuckles with deliberate slowness. "Yeah, Hollywood types always think they're too good for us," he sneered, stepping to her other side, hemming her in. The clerk, still slouched behind the counter, glanced up from his TV but didn't move, either too scared or too indifferent to intervene. Sandra tugged her arm back, trying to slip free, but Goldtooth's fingers dug in harder. "I said let go," she repeated, her voice sharper now, her free hand curling into a fist. She wasn't panicked, not yet, but the walls felt closer, the exit farther away. That's when Goldtooth escalated it. With a flick of his wrist, he snatched the water bottle from her hand and hurled it against the nearest shelf. The plastic shattered, water sprang across the floor, the crack of it echoing in the cramped space. "Oops," he said, grinning wider, his eyes daring her to react. "Guess you'll need to stick around for another one." Big Beard laughed, a deep, guttural sound, and took a step closer, his shadow swallowing the light around her. "What's the matter, darlin'? Scared yet?" Sandra's jaw tightened, her calm fraying at the edges. She yanked her arm again, this time breaking free, but Goldtooth lunged forward, blocking her path to the door completely. "Not so fast," he hissed, his playful tone gone, replaced by something darker, more dangerous. Outside, the Ferrari's gas pump clicked off, but Keanu Reeves hadn't missed a thing. Through the streaked glass, he saw the bikers close in, saw Sandra's posture stiffen, saw the bottle hit the ground. His hand lingered on the nozzle, but his eyes were locked on the scene unfolding inside. The spark had caught, and the fire was about to spread. The convenience store door swung open with a slow, deliberate creak as Keanu Reeves stepped inside, his boots hitting the linoleum with a quiet thud that somehow carried more weight than the biker's bluster. The air thickened instantly, the tension snapping taut like a stretched wire. Sandra Bullock stood near the counter, her water bottle a broken mess on the floor, her eyes flicking to Keanu with a mix of relief and wariness. Big Beard and Goldtooth turned at the sound, their smirks faltering for a split second before hardening into defiance. Keanu didn't rush, didn't raise his voice. He stopped a few feet from them, hands loose at his sides, his dark eyes scanning the scene. Sandra's tense posture, the wet stain spreading across the floor, the clerk frozen behind the counter. Then, in a voice cold and steady as steel, he said, "You're going to apologize to her." Big Beard snorted, crossing his meaty arms over his chest, his beard bristling as he sized Keanu up. "Who the hell you think you are, pretty boy?" he growled, stepping forward to close the gap. Goldtooth stayed by Sandra, his wiry frame buzzing with restless energy, a sharp laugh escaping his lips. "Yeah, what's this? Her knight in shining armor? This ain't the movies, man." Keanu didn't blink, didn't flinch. His gaze locked on Big Beard, calm but unyielding, the kind of quiet that made the room feel smaller. "I said apologize," he repeated, each word a measured cut. The bikers exchanged a glance, their bravado flickering, then doubling down. Big Beard moved first, shoving Keanu hard with both hands, aiming to throw him off balance. But Keanu was faster, sidestepping with a fluid grace honed by years of stunt work. In one smooth motion he caught Big Beard's wrist, twisted it behind the biker's back and locked it there, forcing the giant to his knees with a grunt of pain. Goldtooth lunged, fists swinging, but Keanu pivoted, releasing Big Beard just long enough to dodge and shove Goldtooth back into a shelf. Hands clattered to the floor, rolling in every direction as the biker stumbled, cursing, "Son of a..." Goldtooth started, but Keanu cut him off, stepping forward, his presence a wall they couldn't push through. "Last chance," he said, voice still low, still deadly calm. Big Beard scrambled to his feet, rubbing his wrist, his face red with fury and humiliation. Goldtooth glared, panting, but neither moved to strike again. The clerk gaped, mouth open, the TV's static hum the only sound for a long beat. Finally, Big Beard spat on the floor, muttering, "Sorry, lady," through gritted teeth. Goldtooth sneered but echoed it. "Yeah, sorry," his tone dripping with sarcasm. Sandra crossed her arms, unimpressed, but said nothing. Keanu held their stares until they broke eye contact, then nodded toward the door. "Get out." The bikers shuffled toward the exit, their swagger deflated but not gone. Big Beard paused at the threshold, turning back with a glare that could have curdled milk. "This ain't over, hotshot," he snarled, jabbing a thick finger at Keanu. "You'll regret this." Goldtooth smirked, following his partner out, the bell clanging as the door slammed shut behind them. Keanu watched them go, his expression unreadable, then turned to Sandra. "You okay?" She nodded, exhaling a shaky breath. "Yeah, thanks." But outside, the rumble of motorcycle engines told them both this wasn't the end, not by a long shot. The Ferrari's engine roared to life as Keanu Reeves slammed the doors shut, his hands already on the wheel before Sandra Bullock had fully buckled in. "Go, go, go," she urged, her voice tight with adrenaline as she glanced out the window. The gas station faded into a blur behind them as Keanu peeled out onto the narrow coastal road, tires screeching against the cracked asphalt. For a moment it seemed they'd escaped, until the guttural growl of motorcycle engines split the air. In the rearview mirror, two dark shapes surged into view, Big Beard and Goldtooth, hunched low over their bikes, their faces twisted with vengeance. Sandra's breath caught. "They're coming after us." Keanu's jaw tightened, his eyes flicking between the road and the mirror. "Hold on," he said, shifting gears with a flick of his wrist. The Ferrari leapt forward, its speedometer climbing as the coastal highway twisted ahead, a ribbon of pavement flanked by cliffs on one side and a steep drop to the ocean on the other. The bikers closed in fast, their machines built for agility on these tight curves. Goldtooth gunned his engine, pulling alongside the passenger side, his gold-toothed grin flashing through the window. Before Sandra could react, he yanked a rusted metal bar from his jacket and hurled it at the car. The bar spun through the air, slamming into the windshield with a deafening crack, spiderwebbing the glass inches from her face. She yelped, ducking instinctively as Keanu swerved, the Ferrari fishtailing but staying on course. "You okay?" he shouted over the roar. "Yeah, just drive," she yelled back, her hands gripping the seat. Keanu floored the accelerator, the car's raw power surging as he tried to shake them. The road narrowed, its bends sharper now, forcing him to weave with precision. Big Beard roared up on the driver's side, a heavy chain dangling from his fist, its links glinting in the fading light. With a snarl, he swung it hard, the metal whipping through the air and lashing across the Ferrari's side. A long, jagged scratch tore into the red paint, the screech of steel on steel piercing the chaos. Sandra screamed, "Keanu, he's gonna kill us!" Her voice cracked with panic, her calm from the store long gone. Keanu's knuckles whitened on the wheel, but his focus didn't waver. "Not today," he muttered, jerking the car left to force Big Beard back. The biker recovered fast, his bike hugging the road's edge as he swung the chain again. This time it grazed the rear fender, a glancing blow that rattled the frame. Goldtooth, still on the right, pulled closer, his front wheel inches from the Ferrari's side, taunting them with revs of his engine. Keanu's mind raced. He couldn't outrun them forever on this terrain. The curves favored the bikes, and every second brought a new attack. He scanned the road ahead, spotting a hair-pin turn looming. "Sandra, brace yourself," he said, voice steady despite the chaos. She nodded, clutching the dashboard as he downshifted, the engine howling. The bikers didn't see it coming. They were too caught up in their fury, too close to back off. Keanu's plan was forming, and it was a gamble that could either end this chase or send them all over the cliff. The Ferrari's engine growled as Keanu Reeves gripped the steering wheel, the hairpin turn now just yards ahead, its sharp angle a deadly promise against the darkening California sky. Sandra Bullock clung to the dashboard, her breath shallow and ragged, the cracked windshield a constant reminder of how close they'd come to disaster. Behind them, Goldtooth and Big Beard pressed their attack, their motorcycles roaring like rabid beasts. Keanu's eyes narrowed, his mind locking onto a split-second decision. Without warning, he eased off the gas and tapped the brakes, not enough to stop, just enough to throw off the rhythm. The Ferrari slowed abruptly, its tires humming against the asphalt, and Goldtooth, too close and too reckless, didn't have time to react. His bike wobbled violently as he yanked the handlebars, but momentum betrayed him. With a sickening scrape, the motorcycle skidded out, his wiry frame tumbling across the pavement in a tangle of leather and metal. He hit the ground hard, rolling into the ditch with a guttural yell, his bike spinning to a lifeless stop. Sandra gasped, twisting in her seat to see. "He's down," she cried, but there was no relief in her voice. Big Beard was still there, and his rage erupted like a storm breaking loose. His bearded face contorted with fury, eyes wild as he gunned his engine, pulling alongside the Ferrari's driver's side. "You're dead, Reeves," he bellowed, his voice nearly lost in the wind. From his jacket he yanked a dagger, its blade glinting wickedly in the twilight. Keanu's pulse spiked, but his hand stayed steady. Big Beard leaned low, arm outstretched, aiming the knife at the Ferrari's rear tire. A single slash could send them spinning into the cliffside. The biker thrust forward, the blade slashing inches from the rubber, and Sandra screamed, "Keanu, he's got a knife!" Keanu didn't hesitate. He jerked the wheel right, then left, the Ferrari lurching in a tight zigzag that forced Big Beard to swerve. The biker's arm flailed, the dagger missing its mark by a hair as he fought to keep his bike upright. Keanu seized the moment, flooring the accelerator as they hit the hairpin turn. The car hugged the inside curved tires, squealing, while Big Beard, too fast and too blind with anger, couldn't adjust. Keanu angled the Ferrari sharply, clipping the edge of the biker's front wheel, not enough to crash them, but enough to send Big Beard careening off course. The motorcycle veered wildly, its roar turning to a panicked sputter as it plowed into a thick wall of roadside brush. Branches snapped like gunfire, and Big Beard's massive frame launched over the handlebars, crashing into the undergrowth with a heavy thud. Dust billowed up, swallowing the wreckage as the bike's engine choked out. For a heartbeat, the world was silent save for the Ferrari's fading growl. Sandra's hands trembled as she stared back at the chaos. "Is he?" she started but couldn't finish. Keanu kept his eyes on the road, his voice low and firm. "He's alive. They both are." The tension still hung heavy, electric in the air, but the immediate threat was gone, for now. The turn straightened out and Keanu pushed the car forward, the cliff's edge shrinking in the mirror, but his grip on the wheel didn't loosen. This wasn't over. Not yet. The Ferrari's engine settled into a steady hum as Keanu Reeves guided it off the twisting coastal road and onto the smoother streets leading into Los Angeles. The night had fully fallen now, the city's glow a stark contrast to the wild darkness they'd left behind. Sandra Bullock slumped back in her seat, her hands finally unclenching from the dashboard. She let out a long, shaky breath, the tension draining from her shoulders as the adrenaline ebbed. "Well," she said, forcing a wry smile, "that's one way to make a charity event memorable. Next time I'm picking the route, and we're taking a tank." Keanu's lips twitched into a faint grin, but his eyes stayed fixed on the road, darting to the rear-view mirror every few seconds. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable, but it carried the weight of what they'd just survived. Sandra tilted her head, studying him. "You're awfully quiet. What's going on in that head of yours? Planning a sequel already?" Keanu shrugged, his voice low. "Just glad we're in one piece." She laughed, a real laugh this time, the sound cutting through the lingering strain. "Yeah, me too. I owe you one, Reeves. Coffee's on me next stop, assuming we don't run into any more chain-swinging lunatics." The banter felt like a lifeline, pulling them back to normalcy as the Ferrari rolled up to the hotel hosting the charity auction. Valets in crisp uniforms swarmed the entrance, camera flashes popping as guests in glittering gowns and tailored suits mingled under the marquee. Keanu handed off the keys and they slipped into the crowd, the chaos of the road fading into the buzz of polite chatter and clinking glasses. For a while it worked. Sandra chatted with donors, her charm disarming as always, while Keanu lingered near the bar nursing a drink. But something nagged at him, an itch he couldn't shake. During a lull, he excused himself and headed to the parking garage to check the car. The dim lights cast long shadows across the concrete, and there, under a flickering bulb, he saw it. A fresh, deep scratch gouged into the Ferrari's passenger door, jagged and deliberate. His stomach tightened. This wasn't from the chase. Someone had been here after they'd arrived. He ran a finger along the mark, his mind racing. The bikers were down, but this felt personal, calculated. Sandra's laughter echoed faintly from above, oblivious to the storm brewing below. Keanu Reeves stepped back into the hotel's grand ballroom, the low hum of conversation and clinking glasses washing over him as he wove through the crowd. The scratch on the Ferrari gnawed at his thoughts, a jagged puzzle piece that didn't fit the night's chaos. Sandra Bullock stood near a cluster of guests, her laughter ringing out as she recounted some light-hearted story, oblivious to the shadow creeping back into Keanu's mind. He forced a neutral expression, sliding his hands into his pockets when his phone buzzed against his palm. He pulled it out, glancing at the screen, an unknown number. The message was short, chilling, "Watch your back." His brow furrowed, a cold prickle running down his spine. He scanned the room, instincts flaring, but the sea of tuxedos and gowns revealed nothing, until his eyes landed on a figure by the bar. The man was lean, unassuming, dressed in a sharp black suit that seemed out of place on him. Keanu recognized him instantly, the gas station clerk, the kid with the backward cap who'd barely looked up from his TV hours ago. Now his slouch was gone, replaced by a poised stillness, and his gaze locked onto Keanu with an intensity that wasn't there before. No apathy, no indifference, just a quiet, piercing stare, like a predator sizing up its mark. The clerk raised a glass subtly in Keanu's direction, a faint smirk curling his lips, then turned away, melting into the crowd. Keanu's pulse quickened. This wasn't random. The bikers, the chase, the scratch. It all clicked into place with a sickening twist. He pieced it together in seconds. The clerk wasn't just some bystander. He was the puppet master, Those thugs, Big Beard and Goldtooth, weren't acting on their own. They'd been hired, unleashed like attack dogs. But why? Keanu racked his brain, sifting through a lifetime of faces and fleeting encounters. A stunt gone wrong? A grudge from a forgotten set? Some buried moment he couldn't recall? Whatever it was, the clerk knew him enough to orchestrate this night of chaos as revenge. The realization settled like a stone in his gut. He'd been targeted, and he'd walked right into it, blind. Sandra caught his eye from across the room, waving him over with a grin, but Keanu didn't move. He couldn't drag her back into this. Not now. Not when the game had shifted. He typed a quick text to her, "Need some air, be back soon," and slipped out a side exit before she could protest. The night air hit him hard as he stepped into the parking garage, the Ferrari's scratched frame gleaming under the dim lights like a taunt. He heard footsteps behind him, faint but deliberate, and didn't turn around. The clerk's voice cut through the silence, low and smooth. "You don't even remember, do you? That's the worst part." Keanu stopped, his back still to the man, hands flexing at his sides. "Then enlighten me," he said, voice steady. But the clerk only laughed, a soft, bitter sound, and retreated into the shadows. Keanu stood alone, the city sprawling beyond the garage's edge, its lights indifferent to the war brewing in the dark. He took a slow breath, then walked toward the Ferrari, sliding into the driver's seat. The engine growled awake, and he pulled out into the night, leaving the gallus glow behind. Whatever this was, it wasn't over. He'd face it head-on, alone, ready for the enemy he didn't yet know. This wild ride with Keanu and Sandra teaches us a deep truth. Danger often hides in plain sight, masquerading as the mundane, a quiet gas station, a forgettable face. Keanu's calm vigilance and the clerk's hidden grudge remind us that the past can stalk us even when we don't see it coming. In life, it's a call to stay aware, to trust our instincts when something feels off, and to face the unknown with courage, not complacency. We never know what battles others carry or when they'll spill into our path. Thanks for joining us on this thrilling tale. If it stirred your soul or raced your pulse, drop a comment below. Where are you watching from? Loved it? Hit that subscribe button. Tomorrow we've got another story to ignite your imagination. Stay curious, stay bold. See you then.